All right, so we're back here. We got our host ready to go, so we want to create a VM. Uh, Several ways you could do it from the file menu, new virtual machine. Um, you could click the new virtual machine button on the toolbar. You come down here and create a new virtual machine. And you can right click new virtual machine, Control N. All does the same thing. So we're just gonna make a typical machine. Uh, I don't need any custom requirements. Give it a name. I like to name mine the same as the Windows name is going to be, just so I can keep them straight. You don't have to. You can name anything you want, but like I said, I'll try to keep them all consistent. We have our data stores that we created before. This is the local host data store. We don't want to put anything there just because if we go to vCenter later, it's going to make it a little bit harder to move the machine from host to host. Not impossible, but a little more difficult. We have our NFS storage. We got a lot of storage there, but it's not redundant storage. So if we were to lose a network connection, the VM would lose its disks and crash. But we have our VMFS storage, which is on ESXi, and it's redundant to network. So if we lose some network connectivity, hopefully we don't lose all of it, and the machines will still have their drives. I like to put my operating system and my data files on separate drives, and each drive on a separate data store to kind of spread the load out on the back end. Help with a little bit of I/O a little bit. So we can see that I've set up OS and OS2. So we've already got 12 gigs provisioned. That leaves us to 87 gigs free here. In OS2 we got 32 gigs available, and pretty much nothing's been provisioned. That's just overhead. Let's go with OS since we have more space there. That's where we're going to put our VM and the config files. That's also where it's going to store snapshots, which we can talk about later. It's a little wizard. You get to pick what type operating system you're going to use. You need to have your install media. It doesn't install it for you. I'm going to do Microsoft Server 2008 R2. That's going to be the OS we decide to install in a little bit. How many NICs do we want to connect? We're just going to connect one network card. There's only, if you were connecting multiple, you could connect them to different networks if you have different networks set up. We only set up the one network for VM traffic back in the beginning. That's all we needed. What type of adapter are we going to use? It also determines what kind of driver it's going to use. I'm just going to use the VMXnet 3 is the better adapter, but for right now I'm just going to go with the E100, E1000. Everything works off that. There's no driver issues. We can just get it up and running pretty quick. And we're going to connect it on power on. If you didn't want your machine to be on the network right off the bat for some reason, maybe there's some preliminary configurations you want to do, you could disconnect it there. So that's the data store we're going to use. That's how much space is available, and what size drive are we going to make. It's recommended 40 gigs for the operating system. You can thick provision it a couple different type ways, where it goes ahead and just carves out the 40 gigs right off the bat, takes it out of your data store. It's not available use for any other VM. Or you can thin provision it, where it tells the machine it's got 40 gigs, but it only gives it what it's using. That way, we can provision more than 40 gigs, or more than 87 gigs available. We can provision more than is available if we thin provision. It's a little sleight of hand. You got to be careful with it, because if you over provision too far, you can run out of space on the data store, and that'll cause your machines to crash, and it's not a good situation. You can thick provision and for the most part avoid that. There's a situation where you still could run out of space unexpectedly, but then again you also run the risk of wasting a lot of space. So say the vendor says you need 500 gigs of storage for their server, but you know they're never going to use more than 250. You can then provision 500 gigs. It's only going to use that 250 that you know, but it looks like it has 5. The vendor is going to think they have 5. Everybody's going to be happy. So unless it's mission critical and I want to make sure that storage is available at all times for that server, I then provision. So this is just telling us what we've already done, just a summary, so we can look at it, make sure we got what we wanted. And we can finish here if we wanted, but I want to add another drive to this this machine before we get going. I want it somewhere to store its data. So I'm going to add a hard drive. I'm going to create a new disk, and again I'm going to thin provision, and I'm just going to say it's let's give it 75 gigs. But I don't want to store it with a virtual machine. I want to store it somewhere else, like I was talking about before. I want to keep it over here on the VMFS data. So we select that. That's going to give me what I want. We're just going to leave it all SCSI. I mean, you could give it a different SCSI ID if you wanted. I don't want it to be independent. I want it to be dependent on this machine. So that's what we're going to get. And let's say we don't want the floppy. We don't need a floppy drive on this. We're going to remove it. So now we're going to finish. It's going to create our machine. If we come down here to task, you see that it's created a virtual machine. I'm going to come back to edit settings, because when we start the machine, we want it to have the install media and the CD drive already. So I've got my ISO on the data store. I'll store all those on my NFS share. So we're going to grab the install media. Like I said in the wizard, it asks you what do you want to install, so it can make some recommendations. You have to have the install media, and you have to go through the install wizard to make this happen. It's just like a real machine at this point. Also, it doesn't need 4 gigs for what we're going to do. Let's just bump it down to 1. Now would be a great time to give it more CPU if you want it to have more CPU. Sometimes, especially older OSs, you start changing those CPUs, it's going to give you some problems. But we've got the RAM we want, we got our CPU, we got our CD drive. We want it to be connected when the machine powers on, so it starts the install process. We'll click OK. It's ready to go. So we're just going to start the virtual machine. You can right click it, power on. You could just click the little green icon, power it up. It fires up here. It's showing us that it's on here with this little green icon here. And if we look at the console, we'll see that Windows is booting here. It'll take it just a second. Well, let's just open the console the other way. This is how I prefer to open console anyway. There we go. I think we just missed the startup screens while we were talking. But anyway, so now Well, see, it lets us know that we have two console connections just because I was on the tab. This would let you know if somebody else is working with the machine. Maybe it's expected, unexpected. We're just going to close that. But from here, we just install Windows as we normally would. I'm not going to subject you to that. I'm going to go ahead and get it installed, and when I come back, we'll do the installation of the VMware Tools, where it gives us our device drivers, some additional functionality, uh, and then we'll have a working virtual machine. But I'll be back in a few minutes. It takes, about the amount of time it would take to install a virtual machine, operating system on a physical machine. Process is exactly the same from here. I'm going to select my install options and go through. The same is true if it was a Linux OS or a Mac, any version of Windows. It's all the same. I'm just using this version of Windows for my demo here, and I'm going to get this done, and I'll be back. All right, so now the OS is installed, we want to install VMware Tools. Get our drivers for the mouse and video network, all that good stuff. Just like if we were installing OS on a bare metal machine, we'd want to do the same with this. So from VM menu, guest, install upgrade VMware Tools. Click it. Yes, we know that's what it's going to do. It's going to install drivers. Click OK. And it's going to mount the CD for the VMware Tools into the drive for Windows. There it is. As you can see, the mouse is not very responsive. The VMware Tools is going to help greatly with that. So I kind of have to force it to get down here to where I want it to go. We're going to run it. Definitely want VMware Tools. And again, we didn't put a lot of memory on this machine, so it takes a little bit longer than it normally would. Plus, not having very accurate mouse control doesn't help either. I'm just going to do a typical install. Install. And it's going to take a few minutes for it to do its thing. Here we are. VMware Tools installed. Finish it. Do a reboot so it all takes effect. The other nice thing about VMware Tools is now, or before, if you see here at the bottom, right above my mouse cursor, you got to press Control-Alt to release the mouse cursor from the window to give control back to the host machine or the machine your VMware console is running on. With VMware Tools, now the mouse just comes right out of the window. It makes it a lot easier to navigate and install. Just eliminates a lot of headaches. One thing I didn't mention before, if you're in a console window, anytime you want to do Control-Alt-Delete, you actually need to do Control-Alt-Insert. Click in the window, Control-Insert, and it'll bring up your window, your Control-Delete. Or you can go to Guest, send Control Delete. It's going to pop up for you. You log in, and you're good to go. Your drivers are there. Your Windows working properly. You see the screen's resized. It's got the right video drivers. Let's see if it's having any issues with devices. Device Manager. Yep, no issues with devices. We're good to go. So that's installing a guest machine onto ESXi hypervisor. I'll do another video here in a few minutes. We'll get it posted later, and it's going to be how to create a template. That way, all this stuff's already done for us. We can just roll out machines, as we need them. Anyway, thanks again for watching. I appreciate the views, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.